Director Kim Dae walked through the underground facility on Lunar Base, his footsteps echoing in the metal corridors. Above him, Earth hung like a blue marble in the black sky, but his mind was focused on something much more serious. 3 days ago, they had received the first message from space that was not from humans. The message was simple and polite. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Confederation and wanted to meet. They spoke about peace, trade, and friendship. They wanted to send diplomats to talk. Kim stopped at a heavy door marked with warning signs. Inside, 12 people sat around a metal table. They looked like business people in their dark suits and clean shoes. But Kim knew better. These were not ordinary business people. The aliens want to meet in 2 weeks, Kim said, placing his hands on the table. They think we will send diplomats to talk about trade and cultural exchange. Park Sung looked up from the file she was reading. She was 35 years old and had spent the last 10 years doing jobs that did not exist in any official records. Her suit was expensive and perfectly fitted, but Kim could see the small bulge where she kept her knife. What do we actually know about them? She asked. Kim pressed a button and the wall lit up with images and data. They call themselves the Galactic Confederation. They have been traveling between stars for over 1,000 years. They have made contact with 4 to 7 different species. Every single contact has been peaceful. Lee Won leaned back in his chair. He was quiet and thin, the kind of man who could disappear in a crowd. His job for the last 8 years had been finding people who did not want to be found. That sounds too good to be true. Maybe, Kim said. Or maybe they are telling the truth. Either way, we need to be ready. Choi Minute was the youngest person in the room at 28, but he had already completed more missions than most soldiers saw in their entire careers. What do the politicians want us to do? They want us to send real diplomats, Kim answered. People with degrees in international relations and experience with trade negotiations. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Park Sung started laughing. It was not a happy sound. They want to send people who have never faced a real threat, she said. People who think every problem can be solved with a handshake and a smile. Kim nodded. That is exactly what they want. But I convinced them to let us handle this differently. I told them we needed security advisors to go with the diplomats. Lee Won understood immediately. But we are not security advisors. No, Kim said. You are the diplomats. All of you have been studying alien cultures, languages, and negotiation techniques for the last 6 months. You know more about first contact protocols than most university professors. The team looked at each other. They had trained for this, but it still felt strange. They were used to working in shadows, not sitting at negotiation tables. What if they really are peaceful? Asked Yoon Hai, a woman who had spent 5 years infiltrating criminal organizations. What if they just want to be friends? Kim was quiet for a long moment. Then you will be the best diplomats Earth has ever sent. You will negotiate fair trade deals and cultural exchange programs. You will make humanity proud. And if they are not peaceful? Park Sung asked. Kim's expression became very serious. Then you will do what you do best. You will protect humanity. The briefing continued for 3 more hours. They reviewed everything they knew about the aliens, studied their technology, and practiced diplomatic language. But underneath all the formal training, they were also planning for war. When the meeting ended, Park Sung stayed behind. Kim, are you sure about this? We are not diplomats. We are hunters. We solve problems by removing them permanently. Kim looked at her with tired eyes. Sung, humanity has never had a peaceful first contact. Every time we have met something new, we have had to fight for our survival. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe the aliens really do want peace. But if they do not? Kim walked to the window and looked up at Earth. If they do not want peace, then we send the only kind of people who have kept humanity alive this long. We send hunters who learned how to wear suits and shake hands. 2 weeks later, the human delegation prepared to leave for the meeting point. They wore expensive clothes and carried leather briefcases filled with documents about Earth's culture, resources, and technology. They looked exactly like what the aliens expected to see. But hidden in their clothes were weapons that did not show up on any scanner. In their briefcases, next to the trade agreements, were detailed plans for 17 different ways to destroy an alien space station. In their minds were memories of every dirty fight, every impossible mission, every time they had been outnumbered and outgunned but had still found a way to win. As their ship left Lunar Base, Park Sung looked at her reflection in the window. She looked like a diplomat. She had studied diplomacy for months and could quote trade regulations from memory. But she was still a hunter, and if these aliens were a threat to humanity, they would learn what that meant. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying Earth's strangest diplomatic mission toward their first meeting with alien intelligence. The galaxy expected diplomats, but Earth was sending something much more dangerous, predators who had learned the art of negotiation. Station Harmony floated in the empty space between two star systems, built specifically for meetings like this. The alien structure was beautiful, with smooth white walls and soft blue lights that made everything feel calm and peaceful. Ambassador Veltar had arrived 3 hours early with his team of 12 specialists. They carried gifts from different worlds and had prepared welcome ceremonies that had worked successfully 4 to 7 times before. Veltar was nervous but excited. First contact was always special, but humans seemed particularly interesting. Their initial message had been perfectly polite and diplomatic. Everything suggested this would be another smooth integration into the Confederation. "The human ship is approaching," announced his aide, a thin alien with purple skin named Kolran. "They are requesting permission to dock at Port 7. "Granted," Veltar said, smoothing his ceremonial robes. "Prepare the welcome gifts and activate the translation systems." The human ship was small and black, very different from the colorful vessels most species used for diplomacy. It docked with mechanical precision, and Veltar could hear the airlock cycling through its security checks. When the doors opened, a human woman stepped out first. Veltar had studied human anatomy, but seeing one in person was still surprising. She was shorter than he expected, with dark hair pulled back tightly and wearing a dark blue outfit that looked very formal. What confused Veltar was how she moved. Instead of walking straight toward him like most diplomats did, her eyes swept the corridor from left to right, studying every door, every corner, every possible hiding place. Her movements were careful and controlled, like she expected danger around every corner. Behind her came 2 human males, both also wearing dark formal clothes. They spread out instead of staying together, positioning themselves so they could see different parts of the room. One of them kept touching something hidden under his jacket, while the other seemed to be counting the alien security guards. "Welcome to Station Harmony," Veltar said, his translator making the words sound perfectly normal in human language. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Confederation. We are honored to meet representatives of Earth." The woman stepped forward, but her eyes never stopped moving. "I am Park Sung, Chief Negotiator for Earth's diplomatic mission. These are my colleagues, Lee Won and Choi Minute. We appreciate your invitation." Veltar noticed that she called herself a negotiator, not a diplomat. He also noticed that when she shook his hand, her grip was much stronger than necessary, and she positioned herself so that her colleagues could cover all the exits. "Please, follow me to the meeting chamber," Veltar said. "We have prepared a traditional welcome ceremony." As they walked through the station corridors, Veltar tried to make pleasant conversation, but the human's behavior was getting stranger. Lee Won kept looking up at the ceiling, as if he was memorizing the layout of the ventilation system. Choi Minute walked slightly behind the group, occasionally stopping to examine doors and control panels. Park Sung asked questions, but they were not the questions Veltar expected. Instead of asking about trade opportunities or cultural exchange, she wanted to know about the station's security systems, emergency procedures, and backup power sources. "Is there a particular reason for your interest in our safety protocols?" Veltar asked, trying to keep his voice friendly. "Professional habit," Park Sung replied. "We always like to understand our environment." When they reached the meeting chamber, Veltar presented the traditional gifts, beautiful crystals from the Andorian system, poetry written by the greatest minds of the Zephyr worlds, and a small device that could translate any language instantly. Park Sung accepted each gift politely, but Veltar noticed that she examined them very carefully, almost like she was checking them for hidden dangers. When she received the crystal, she tested its weight and hardness. When she got the translation device, she studied how it could be taken apart. "These are beautiful," she said. "We also brought gifts to share." She reached into her leather case and pulled out several items. There was a book about Earth's history, a small sculpture, and what looked like a simple metal pen. But as she presented each gift, her explanations confused Veltar more and more. The book was about something called the Korean War, and as Park Sung described it, it sounded less like history and more like a military manual. She talked about strategic positioning, supply line management, and negotiating from positions of strength. The sculpture, she explained, represented the diplomatic victory at a place called Inkan. But her description made it sound like some kind of surprise attack involving thousands of soldiers and military ships. Even the pen seemed strange. Park Sung demonstrated how it worked by writing on paper, but she held it in a way that suggested it might have other uses. Li Wan smiled when he saw it, and Veltar caught him making a small gesture toward his neck. Your species seems to have a very military approach to diplomacy, Koran whispered to Veltar in their own language. Veltar nodded. He was beginning to understand that something was wrong. These did not seem like normal diplomats. Normal diplomats talked about art, philosophy, and mutual understanding. These humans talked about warfare and kept scanning for threats that did not exist. When Park Sung began sharing stories of humanity's greatest diplomatic achievements, Veltar felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Every story involved conflict, strategic thinking, and what sounded like military operations. The humans seemed proud of these stories, but they terrified the alien delegation. Perhaps we should take a break, Veltar suggested. Give everyone time to process this cultural exchange. Park Sung nodded. Good idea. Li Wan, secure the perimeter. Choi Minute, check the communication systems. The two men immediately moved to different parts of the room, one examining the doors and windows, the other studying the computer terminals. They moved with the smooth coordination of people who had worked together in dangerous situations many times before. Veltar watched them work and realized with growing alarm that Earth had not sent diplomats at all. They had sent something much more dangerous, warriors who had learned to wear nice clothes and speak politely. The question was, why? The attack happened during lunch. Veltar was in the middle of explaining Confederation trade policies when the station's lights flickered and changed from soft blue to harsh red. An alarm began making a low, steady sound that meant danger. What is that? Park Sung asked, but she was already moving. In one smooth motion, she pushed back from the table and positioned herself where she could see both entrances to the room. Pirates, Veltar said, his voice shaking slightly. It happens sometimes in this region of space. Do not worry. They usually just take some cargo and leave. We follow standard protocol and nobody gets hurt. Li Wan had moved to the window and was looking out at three small, dark ships that had attached themselves to the station like metal parasites. How many crew members do these pirates usually have? Maybe 20 or 30, Koren answered. But they are not organized. Just criminals looking for easy money. Park Sung looked at Li Wan, and he nodded slightly. It was such a small gesture that Veltar almost missed it, but something in that tiny exchange made his skin crawl. These humans were talking to each other without saying words. What is your standard protocol? Park Sung asked. We secure all valuable items in the central safe, Veltar explained. Then we wait in the main assembly area where the pirates can see us. We cooperate with their demands and wait for Confederation security to arrive. Usually takes about 6 hours. Park Sung looked at him like he had just suggested jumping into a black hole. You just give up. It is the civilized way, Veltar said. Violence only makes things worse. The pirates take what they want and leave. Everyone goes home safely. Choi Minute, who had been quiet during the entire diplomatic meeting, finally spoke. How many times have you done this? This is my 43rd pirate encounter, Veltar said proudly. I have never been seriously injured. The humans looked at each other again, and Park Sung made a decision that would change everything. Li Wan, I need station schematics and security system access. Choi Minute, how many hostile contacts? Working on it, Li Wan said, pulling out what looked like a normal tablet but was apparently much more than that. His fingers moved across the screen faster than Veltar could follow. Station layout downloaded. Security cameras, got them. Emergency systems, locked and loaded. Choi Minute had disappeared. One moment he was standing by the door, and the next moment he was gone. Veltar looked around the room in confusion. Where did he go? Koran whispered. Park Sung was moving toward a fallen station guard who had been knocked unconscious when the pirates breached the outer hull. She knelt beside him and carefully removed his weapon, checking it with the practiced ease of someone who had handled many different guns. What are you doing? Veltar asked, his voice getting higher. We are diplomats. We do not fight. You are diplomats, Park Sung said, standing up with the guard's pistol in her hand. We are problem solvers. A voice came through the comm system, speaking accented Galactic Standard. Attention station occupants. This is Captain Vex of the Free Raiders. We are here for cargo only. Cooperate and nobody dies. Park Sung touched her ear, and Veltar realized she was wearing some kind of communication device. Minute, report. A voice answered that seemed to come from inside the walls. 17 hostiles total. Amateur equipment, basic weapons. They split into 3 groups, 8 heading for the cargo bay, 6 moving towards central control, 3 coming to the diplomatic section. Time frame? Give me 8 minutes for full sweep. Less if you want to make noise. Park Sung looked at Lee Won, who was still working with his tablet. Security? All internal cameras under our control. Emergency blast doors ready to deploy on your command. I can cut power to any section you want. Veltar felt like he was watching something from a nightmare. These were not diplomats having a discussion about trade agreements. These were military specialists coordinating an attack. Wait, he said, grabbing Park Sung's arm. You cannot do this. Violence is not the answer. People will get hurt. Park Sung looked at his hand on her arm, then looked at his face. Her expression was not angry or threatening. It was patient, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. Ambassador Veltar, in 6 minutes, those pirates will be in this room. They will see valuable alien artifacts and 3 species they have never encountered before. Do you really think they will just take some cargo and leave? Before Veltar could answer, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, casting everything in red shadows. Through the comm system, they could hear shouting and the sound of metal being cut. They are coming through the maintenance shaft, Lee Won reported. 3 pirates, armed with energy weapons and cutting tools. Park Sung moved to the door and did something to the control panel. The door sealed with a soft hiss. That will buy us 2 minutes, she said. Then she looked at the alien delegation, who were huddled together in fear. Stay in the center of the room and do not move. What happened next took exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The humans moved through station harmony like they owned it. Veltar watched through the security monitors as they turned his peaceful diplomatic station into a hunting ground. They used furniture for cover, turned maintenance corridors into traps, and moved with coordination that spoke of years working together in dangerous places. When the last pirate fell unconscious, the humans were already checking them for weapons and information. Threat neutralized, Choi Minute reported. No casualties on our side. Park Sung straightened her jacket and smiled at Veltar. Now we can finish our discussion about trade agreements. Veltar stood in the middle of his diplomatic station, staring at 17 unconscious pirates who were tied up with their own equipment. The entire attack had lasted less than 10 minutes, but it felt like his understanding of the universe had been completely destroyed. What kind of diplomats are you? He asked, his voice shaking with confusion and something that might have been fear. Park Sung was checking her suit jacket for damage while Lee Won continued monitoring the security screens. Choi Minute had reappeared from wherever he had been hiding and was calmly organizing the pirates' weapons into neat piles. The only kind Earth knows how to make, Park Sung answered simply. She walked over to where the alien delegation was still huddled together, looking like they had just witnessed something impossible. Her movements were calm and professional, but Veltar could see that she was still ready for more trouble. Ambassador Veltar, we need to talk honestly, she said, sitting down across from him. But first, let me ask you something. In all your 43 pirate encounters, how many times did the pirates actually just take cargo and leave? Veltar thought about it. Well, most of the time. Most of the time is not all of the time, Park Sung said. What happened the other times? Koran spoke up quietly. Sometimes they took people. Sometimes they damaged the stations. Sometimes they came back later with more ships. But violence only makes things worse, Veltar insisted. Fighting leads to more fighting. It never ends. Lee Won looked up from his tablet. Ambassador, how many Confederation stations have been destroyed by pirates in the last 10 years? I do not know the exact number. 4 to 7, Lee Won said. 4 to 7 stations destroyed, over 3,000 people killed or taken as slaves. All because nobody fought back. The number hit Veltar like a physical blow. He had never thought about it that way. Park Sung leaned forward. Let me explain something about Earth, Ambassador. We have been preparing for first contact for over 50 years. We have run thousands of simulations, studied every possibility, and prepared for every scenario we could imagine. And? Veltar asked. And every single scenario ended the same way. With conflict. Not because we wanted to fight, but because that is what our history taught us to expect. She gestured to her teammates. Earth has never had a peaceful first contact with anything. When European explorers met Native Americans, it led to war. When different human nations encountered each other, it led to war. When we finally reached space and started looking for other life, we prepared for war. Choi Minute, who had been silent since reappearing, finally spoke. We trained for 50 different ways aliens might try to kill us. We never trained for aliens who would let pirates kill them instead. Veltar felt something cold in his stomach. So you are soldiers, not diplomats? No, Park Sung said firmly. We are both. I have spent the last 8 months studying Confederation law, trade regulations, and diplomatic protocol. Lee Won speaks 7 galactic languages fluently. Choi Minute has memoized the cultural practices of 43 different species. Lee Won nodded. I can negotiate a mining rights contract in the morning and eliminate a pirate fleet in the evening. Both skills are necessary where we come from. But why? Veltar asked. Why not send real diplomats? People trained in peace. Park Sung was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. Because real diplomats assume that everyone wants peace. They assume that talking will always work. They assume that being nice will keep them safe. She pointed to the unconscious pirates. Those assumptions would have gotten you killed today. Koran spoke up nervously. But surely your people have philosophers, teachers, people who believe in peaceful solutions. Of course we do, Park Sung said. Earth has many peaceful people. But we do not send them to make first contact with unknown alien species. Why not? Lee Won answered this time. Because if we are wrong about you, if you turn out to be hostile, those peaceful people would be dead. And Earth would face an alien threat without knowing anything about your capabilities, your technology, or your weaknesses. Choi Minute added, we are not here just to make friends. We are here to make sure humanity survives contact with you. The truth of it settled over the alien delegation like a heavy blanket. These humans had not come to Station Harmony to join the Galactic Confederation as junior partners seeking trade and friendship. They had come as representatives of a species that treated first contact as a military operation. So if we had been hostile, Veltar began. You would be dead, Park Sung said without emotion. And we would have learned everything we needed to know about Confederation technology, military capabilities, and weaknesses before returning to Earth with a full intelligence report. Veltar looked around at his peaceful diplomatic station, with its soft lights and comfortable furniture, and realized how naive they had all been. The Confederation had made contact with 4 to 7 species, and every single one had been as peaceful as they were. They had no experience with predators. An alarm chimed softly, and Lee Won looked up from his tablet. Confederation security fleet is approaching. 17 ships, armed but not targeting us. Park Sung smiled, and for the first time since meeting her, Veltar thought it looked genuinely friendly instead of terrifying. Perfect timing, she said, standing up and adjusting her suit jacket. Now we can begin the real diplomatic negotiations. She looked at Veltar with something that might have been sympathy. Ambassador, Earth wants to join the Galactic Confederation. But we want to join as equals, not as junior partners who need protection. The question is, does the Confederation need a species that can solve problems you cannot solve with talking? Admiral Kethran arrived at Station Harmony with 17 warships, expecting to find the usual aftermath of a pirate attack, damaged systems, terrified diplomats, and criminals who had escaped with stolen cargo. Instead, he found something that would change how the Confederation thought about security forever. Status report, he requested as his shuttle docked with the station. All pirates neutralized and secured, came the response from station control. No casualties among diplomatic personnel. Station systems fully operational. Kethran frowned. In 40 years of military service, he had never heard those words after a pirate attack. When he entered the main diplomatic chamber, he found Ambassador Veltar sitting across from 3 humans who looked like they were discussing a business contract. 17 unconscious pirates were lined up against one wall, tied up with their own equipment. Ambassador, Kethran said carefully, what exactly happened here? Veltar looked up with an expression that mixed confusion, fear, and something that might have been admiration. Admiral, I think we need to completely rethink our approach to security. Over the next 2 hours, Kethran reviewed security footage that made him question everything he thought he knew about warfare. The humans had moved through the station like they were playing a game they had already won. They used furniture as weapons, turned maintenance areas into traps, and coordinated their attack with precision that would make Confederation Special Forces jealous. They are not military, Veltar explained. At least, not officially. They are diplomats who learn to fight, or fighters who learn diplomacy. I am not sure which. Park Sung approached the Admiral with a tablet containing detailed information about the pirate organization, their ship specifications, and intelligence about 3 other criminal groups operating in the sector. We interrogated them while they were unconscious, she said matter-of-factly. Thought you might find this useful. Kethran stared at the intelligence report. It contained more actionable information than Confederation security had gathered in 6 months of investigation. How did you get this information so quickly? Li Wan looked up from where he was helping pack up diplomatic materials. We have experience with interrogation techniques that do not require the subject to be awake or cooperative. 3 weeks later, Park Sung stood in the Confederation Council chambers on the capital world of Nexus Prime. Around her, representatives from dozens of species debated humanity's application for membership. The discussion had been going on for 6 hours. The humans present a unique problem, said Councillor Rindal, a tall being with silver skin who represented the peaceful Etherian Republic. Their approach to diplomacy is unusual. Unusual is a kind word, added Councillor Vextar from the Meditation Worlds. They solve problems through violence. This goes against everything the Confederation stands for. Park Sung had been listening patiently, but now she requested permission to speak. Honored councillors, she began, you are correct that humans approach problems differently than other Confederation species. But I would like to present some information for your consideration. She activated a holographic display that showed a map of Confederation space. Certain sectors were marked in red. These are areas where Confederation authority has been challenged in the last 5 years, she explained. Pirate organizations, warlord territories, criminal syndicates that ignore your diplomatic attempts at negotiation. The red areas covered nearly 20% of Confederation space. Now, let me show you what has happened in the 3 weeks since humans began operating in these regions. The map changed. Most of the red areas had turned green. Councillor Rindal leaned forward. How is this possible? Humans solved problems that could not be solved with traditional diplomacy, Park Sung said. We negotiated when negotiation was possible. We used other methods when negotiation was not enough. Admiral Kethran stood up from where he had been observing the session. Councillors, I have reviewed the human operations personally. In 3 weeks, they eliminated 4 major pirate organizations, negotiated the surrender of 2 warlord territories, and established trade agreements with 3 previously hostile systems. They accomplished more than our diplomatic corps has achieved in 5 years. Through violence, Councillor Vextar insisted. Through effective problem-solving, Kethran corrected. Violence was only used when peaceful methods failed. And when violence was necessary, it was swift, precise, and final. The debate continued for another 2 hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The Confederation needed humans, even if they did not fully understand them. 6 months later, Ambassador Park Sung walked into a meeting room on a space station in the lawless Outer Rim territories. Across the table sat 3 alien warlords who had been terrorizing shipping lanes for over a decade. They had ignored every diplomatic attempt by the Confederation, knowing that the peaceful species would never actually fight back. Behind Park Sung, Li Wan and Choi Minute set their briefcases on the table. The cases contained both detailed trade agreements and enough modified weapons to destroy the entire station. Gentlemen, Park Sung said, her smile perfectly diplomatic and absolutely terrifying, let us discuss your retirement options. The lead warlord, a massive creature with scales and too many teeth, laughed. You think we fear the Confederation's diplomats? Your people are weak. You will offer us credits to stop our raids, and we will take your money and continue raiding. Park Sung opened her briefcase and pulled out 2 documents. She placed them on the table. Option 1, she said, pointing to the first document, is a generous retirement package. The Confederation will provide you with a comfortable planet, sufficient resources for your crews, and amnesty for past crimes. In exchange, you cease all hostile activities and transition to legitimate business operations. She pointed to the second document. Option 2 is your obituary. I took the liberty of writing it ahead of time. The warlord stopped laughing. Word spread quickly through the galaxy's dark corners. The Confederation had changed. They still preferred peace, but now they sent humans to places where peace was not enough. Beings who wore expensive suits and carried diplomatic credentials, but who could end civilizations before lunch and negotiate trade agreements afterward. The galaxy had its first human embassy, and suddenly, problems that had seemed impossible to solve were being resolved with remarkable efficiency.